Today we are joined by Dr Lawrence Newport, a citizen campaigner for better government. He started by getting the American Bully XL banned.
He's moved on to petty crime, particularly across London, bikes and phones. And now his focus is on growth. He started the Looking for Growth movement, and it feels like the tech bros have moved to Westminster. But will the politicians listen?
This is actually worse than ever. It actually does require police action, and if you don't, it will keep going at scale. And of course, what happens is the general public is essentially blamed.
We're here on the Bakerloo line, where every single carriage is covered in vile graffiti. That's why we spent our morning on Sunday tidying it up and cleaning. We're here doing what Sadiq can't.
That's a clip from a vigilante operation that has been cleaning up graffiti on the London Underground, and we here at the Daily Tea love it. Ordinary people who are sick of broken Britain, not sitting around waiting for a bureaucrat to fix things, but rolling up their sleeves and doing it for themselves. Well, one of the people behind that campaign joins us here today, Dr Lawrence Newport. Hello.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Given that you're not an MP, not even a councillor, you've got a remarkable CV. You've founded 2 campaign groups looking for growth and crush crime. You and your team of wonks have drafted an infrastructure bill, forced a government not to water down its planning reforms, launched a monthly tracker of popular opinion on growth, launched a podcast, been interviewed countless times, held large meetings with MPs, been endorsed by Dom Cummings, by Labour's Growth Group and by Reform. And all this began with a walk in the park in 2023.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us what happened to you that day?
I was walking my dog, and this is like a normal park near my house, slight wooded area. I turned a corner and there were 2 dogs hanging upside down, jaws locked on a branch of a tree with their owner yelling, "Get it, get it, get it." These were huge dogs, about, I'd estimate, between 40 and 60 kilos of size. They were very, very, very large dogs. Both looked like pit bull type dogs. And I knew from my law degree, because of the Dangerous Dogs Act in the 1990s, pit bulls in this country have been banned. So I thought, okay, how is there these 2 massive pit bulls in the park? So I took my dog back home and I thought, what's actually going on here? What is the story? Is anything actually happening? So I decided to look into, 1, what are these types of dogs? 2, suddenly, over the next 2, 3, 4 days, really next 2 weeks, I saw them all over my local area. And so I tried to find out what the breed was. I couldn't really find much information. I then decided, well, actually, let's just look. If there's suddenly this uptick, I'm seeing an uptick in these very large dogs. Are there any actual real world effects? So I plugged into, I just took all of the fatality data. This is fatalities of people to dogs.
Who provides that data?
So there's a mixture of sources, but basically the RSPCA has a bunch until 2016, which they released a report, and they all use sources from just public news sources, and then a little bit later you get ONS data. But I tried to take the best data we could at the moment, so I actually scraped Wikipedia, all of the articles on there, any news stories I could get, shoved it into a single Excel document, and just looked at what's happening in terms of fatalities. You can see you basically get about an average of 3 fatalities a year to dogs until 3 years previously, in which case they suddenly jump. They jumped up to 10. And that number was entirely explained. 70% of those deaths were explained by 1 dog breed. And that dog breed was the American Bully. Click on it. That's the dogs I saw. There is something happening here. I tried to look into this in any more detail. And it only takes a bit of Googling to find these are indeed pit bulls. They have been bred from fighting stock who have been aggressively inbred for about 30 years to produce a dog that's triple a pit bull size. And then because of that size, they got around our not very well written restrictions because pit bulls are only this big. So if you have a dog triple its size, it's no longer a pit bull, it's now something else. Hence the American Bully XL. And I decided something had to happen about this, that we didn't have to accept suddenly all this uptick in stories. All this uptick as well, of course, there were loads of people in my area. I saw flyers of local dogs who'd been attacked. Every single time, description very similar. Suddenly these large dogs, same thing. And there was not only no attention, very little attention on the issue, but there was an entire sector that was essentially trying to remove all dog bans and actually make this much more Bring back the pit bull, bring back a bunch of other dangerous dog breeds. And this seemed to me something which needed to change now. And if we waited too long, even 2-3 more years, there would have been enough of these dogs in the dog population. It would be almost impossible to stop.
So these were sort of fashion dogs. I remember them being very trendy at the time.
Yes.
But 77 days later, they're banned.
Yes.
How did you do that?
So basically, this is the start of the Ban the Bully XL campaign, which at the time I didn't think of as a campaign. It wasn't really until like a week before Rishi Sunak announced they were going to ban them that someone said to me, you've just ran a very successful campaign. And I was like, what do you mean? I just wanted something done.
Yeah, I was just on paternity leave.
I just want this finished. I just want this solved.
We should say that you were a legal academic and you were on paternity leave while all this was going on.
Yeah. Okay. So I was actually
Which
fielding...
explains how your mind works, that you're able to make links between data and stuff like that, and also why you had time on your hands.
Yes, yeah, exactly. In fact, yes, I was calling journalists literally right after my son had been born, out the room being like, good. please, cover X, Y, Z. So we basically, right after it became very obvious to me what was happening, I wrote a blog post. Here are the stats on the deaths. Here are the stats on the attacks, because attacks had also gone up. So there was a lot more logging in hospitals of the data, which often, by the way, is also hidden, because people, when they go to the doctor from a dog injury, if it's their own dog, they tend not to want to say anything for obvious reasons. But even those figures were dramatically increasing. And as much as I could find, there's no good recording of dog-on-dog attacks. We actually tried to spin up our own version of recording dog-on-dog attacks, scraping all the data we could from people posting online about attacks that happened in their area, using Nextdoor, Facebook, etc. And we tried to estimate the actual dog-on-dog attacks, because no one's collecting that data at all. All of this, I put in a blog post, put it online, that went viral. And then I did a YouTube video on it that did not go viral, but I was contacted as a result of that from someone who represents a victims group. This is for people who have had their dogs killed by other dogs. And they said, we keep hearing it's the same dog breed, it's the same thing. Will you do something about this? Because no one with any credentials will ever speak about this issue publicly. They're always worried about it because you get a lot of pushback. And I said, sure. And what I actually did was I talked to a few people that I knew in government, SPADS advisors and so on. And I sent them a 2-pager, which is like 2 pages making super clear what the problem was, how they could solve it, because it was super easy to solve. It's literally Secretary of State just writes a sentence adding them to the dangerous dogs list. They already should be banned. They are already pit bulls. I was just proving to them, you've actually already banned these things. Just because your laws are about 30 years out of date, that the breeding has moved on. In fact, we actually found out later that, of course, in America, one tactic is to import pit bulls here is to rebrand them as Bully XLs. You can dual register your dog in America as a pit bull or a bully in order to get around, specifically get around legislation. So I said, easy, quick fix. I wait a couple of weeks and they basically tell me they agree, but they're not going to do anything about it unless it was a national issue of some kind. And so I was like, okay then. But this was like my major signal to me of just how busted things are in this country. Yes. You can essentially say, like, this is obviously something that should be stopped.
A building is on fire.
Yes.
You have pointed out to people in government that it is on fire, but they won't put it out until everyone else notices that it's on fire.
But not only that, here's a hose and a bucket. Like,
I'm telling you how you can put it out.
I mean, it's easy. It's like it will take a day of your time to do this thing. You have already, it's already legislation on the books.
Yes.
These things should already be enforced. It's arguable you don't even need to make any change.
But it was amazing. It had to become a cultural issue first. I remember just out of nowhere, everyone was talking about XL bullies.
Yes.
I didn't even know what they were before that.
Then it became, so I talked to the person who was running the victims group, and they had loads of different contacts in various areas, and in terms of just like people who were trying to do things. So someone trying to estimate the dog-on-dog attacks, they were just scraping all this data themselves and uploading it to a website, didn't know what to do with it. So we got myself, about 4 or 5 other people, someone who'd FOI'd a bunch of data on this. For instance, we then got police data showing that, because they break down by breed the dogs they seize. And for instance, very large other dogs that people sometimes get worried about, like Rottweilers, were like 2% of seizures, and Bully XLs were 35%.
Wow.
This is like, it's unbelievable difference in scale.
Yeah.
And so we basically decided, we're just going to do this. We're going to keep making noise on this. We are going to push as much as possible. We are going to try to put out as much data as possible. We got an opinion poll, which I also mistakenly thought would suddenly shift everything. I thought we should get an opinion poll, show the government, everyone agrees. Actually, at the time, I didn't know what people would think. But we had no money or funding. This was a friend of mine won 3 YouGov questions in a raffle. It was some like political raffle somewhere, and I was like, please,
Very
can I
niche
use
raffle.
Yes, your 3 YouGov questions, please,
You
to
can win a
test this.
raffle to have YouGov do a poll.
For 3 questions, I think it was. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I prefer a box of chocolate.
But it was very good for us. We got these questions back, and it doesn't matter what political party you are. If you're dog owners or not dog owners, it was massive majority support for banning the Bully XL. This is something which we released with a big splash, made 0 impact as well. And that then taught me, this was about a month and a half-ish into the campaign, that taught me right then, actually politicians are not optimizing for what is true. They already agree that this is a problem. They already told me they agree. They're not optimizing for directly what the public thinks. They're optimizing instead for what is permissible in my social circles.
Right.
So then my goal became, we have to basically make everyone in Westminster obsessed with this issue. and then when they get obsessed by it, they will then go, well, is it popular? Oh, it is popular. We should do this thing. It's free, basically. And that became the entire mechanism. I became completely obsessed with how do we just make it something so that everyone around their dinner table in Westminster and circles around it are talking about this thing and asking, why can't they just do something about it? Why can't they just solve it?
Yeah.
And so that became our obsessive focus, which is why we focused on Twitter in particular, because journalism and politicians, they're all on Twitter. I was not particularly good on Twitter before at all, and I just had to quickly learn.
You're prolific now.
Yeah, now I can't stop. now I'm also addicted to the thing. But yeah, it was like trying to build, exactly as you say, that's exactly the thing that I wanted, was this thing to crop up and for you to encounter it and be like, what's this? Why is this so bad? Wait, why haven't we done anything on it? And just get angry about it, because actually it was something they could solve. And when they did solve it, when they did actually, commit to doing it, it was their end of year adverts was one of their top, for the Conservatives, one of their top policies. And in fact, after Rishi Sunak had left government, there was a poll asking people what they most liked about what they've done. And the third thing, above several tax cuts, was banning the Bully XL. So, it was popular and it was the right thing to do, but they could have done it
Right.
months previously and immediately when they actually already knew about it and actually had already said they agreed.
Well, it's exciting to hear that a citizen can change things, but it's also really depressing to learn that I thought politicians just slavishly responded to what the public want. They don't.
No.
They slavishly respond to what their peer group wants.
Yeah.
And that actually for the citizen to change things, they don't target the general population. They need to target a few thousand people living within one postcode.
Well, you kind of want to do both.
Right.
In that what you want to do, because you need to make it also something that when they decide, oh, actually, all my friends like this and all my wider dinner circle likes this, but also the public is on side. It gives that nice, that every part is making it like an easier slide into doing something.
Yeah.
Like the reality is, it needs so much pushing, so much prompting, and so much of making the slide as easy as possible. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's trying to get through on that. That's the real difficulty, actually. But yes.
Could some of the pushback you receive explain why politicians were reluctant to touch it? Because I believe you did receive a lot of hate correspondence and even death threats.
Yeah, loads. I mean, weirdly, during the campaign itself, not very much. I was really worried. Actually, one of my first pieces I wrote was actually for The Telegraph on this, and I almost pulled it the day before it went out because I was so worried about, my God, I'm going to put this into a national newspaper. What's going to happen? Not much happened until about a few days before Rishi Sunak announced it, because I think a lot of the owners and other and some of the gangs and otherwise that were using these dogs didn't actually think they'd do anything.
Right.
And then when it happened, there was a time period between Rishi Sunak announcing it and it actually coming into force in the January. That period was mad. That was awful. I mean, there were very funny pictures of me, like literally like pulling the strings of Rishi Sunak and stuff like this. It was completely insane. But, there was this kind of belief that if they could like ruin me in some way, the whole thing would collapse. When actually, of course, I didn't really have to do anything past that point. It was already moving on. But at that point, there was a lot of death threats. There were people trying to find out where I lived, where they tried to work out. I was still on paternity leave, but they were trying to work out where I was working. So they could send people to university. They had like a whole Discord server that was private. They were trying to just digging things up about me as much as they could. My university was very, very good. It wasn't until I left the university that they told me that they had received emails every single day claiming a bunch of extremely defamatory stuff about me from different email accounts, claiming all kinds of things you can imagine to try to get me fired.
Right. And that's okay. So I can understand why there was that pushback, partly because of the demographic of the kind of people who have bully XLs, but also because you are going after animals.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's impressive that your institution stood by you, because there are other people who have said things, we've covered it on this show, done things, their institutions don't stand by them. And that, again, is another reason why citizens might not feel inclined to do what you do. Not just the uphill struggle, but am I risking my job?
Yeah, totally.
I'm really interested in the, I want to move us on slightly to crush crime, because I'm really interested in what you said about something being a kind of cultural issue, something popular with the public, and feeling anecdotally true to politicians. And I think that is perfectly encapsulated in crush crime, which I'd love you to tell us about, but in particular, mobile phone theft. When Robert Jenrick did a video recently about people dodging fares on the underground, it was so exciting to see a politician out there with the people, but chiefly he was picking up on things, petty crimes that annoy people. Everyone sees, everyone experiences, everyone's had a bike nicked or a phone nicked. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about crush crime and how you've learned from the kind of XL Bullies campaign to bring that into force.
Yeah, so after the Bullies campaign, I did some campaign consultancy stuff, basically. That's why I moved out of academia. After about a year of that, I wanted to do something on, like, there was a bunch of stuff, particularly on crime, that was really frustrating a lot of people around me. I would, just at events, parties and stuff, I'd hear people say, oh, my phone got nicked last week. My bike got nicked 2 months ago.
You now have Nigel Farage saying that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's everywhere. And suddenly I was thinking, weirdly, no one is talking about this thing. This is clearly a problem. It wasn't the case 2 years ago or 5 years ago. So something's changed. Like, this isn't like normal chit chat. And so I started looking into this. It had a similar pattern. You suddenly see like a massive
Fire up
spike.
the spreadsheet.
Yeah. I mean, exactly this. And also just trying to find something that was, because there's so much in Britain that just feels broken and just extremely depressing, and trying to find something that's like, look, it wasn't the case 5 years ago. It wasn't the case 20 years ago. Like, how do we make sure that petty theft, because now, for instance, petty theft and shoplifting is the highest ever recorded. That's just come out last week or the week before. This is now something that we are really in the midst of an epidemic on, and is something which we know the things that work. We know that just 10% of offenders are responsible for over half of all crime. These are people who have 15 or more offences to their name. So 15 or more previous offences. When I first heard that, I literally thought I was misreading it. Like, I can't believe that that's the case. But there is this whole constituency of people. Now at Crush Crime, we release them actually kind of daily. People who have maybe 300 previous offences, who are regularly receiving either no prison time at all or very minimal prison time, maybe a couple of weeks, a couple of months, something like this. If we have this kind of revolving door like this, these same people, of course, get back out. They commit the same offences. It makes things much, much more difficult for all of us. Whereas we know targeted policing and imprisoning these people for longer, depending on how many offences they've had previously, reduces crime rates. You can look at an example at the City of London where there was one bike theft gang. The local police did a sting operation on a bike theft gang. they arrested, I think it's about 7 people, and bike thefts in the area fell by 90% for the period that these people were away for. Wow. They were doing all of the all of the thefts, essentially. Similarly here, we know there's at least one person in London who's responsible for about 1% of all phone theft in the city, going around prolifically stealing phones, several hundred a day. Like that's possible. They can do it at scale. Mm-hmm. And we are choosing, through inaction, through not focusing on it, to not arrest and imprison these people for longer periods based on their previous offences. And for that reason, we're seeing this huge increase as essentially, if your phone is stolen or you witness shoplifting, even if you report it to the police, the rate of suspect identified, not convictions, but just identified, is 1%.
I wonder what you think of these new grab lines. Have you seen these?
Yes.
Marked on the pavement?
Yes.
Have you not heard of this?
No, I've completely missed it.
It's like,
I live in lovely Bath. We don't have
say,
grab lines in Bath.
No, when I first heard it, I thought it was something very different. But when you're waiting for a train, stand behind the yellow line. Mm-hmm. They're now drawing purple lines down pavements in London and saying, walk that side of the line, not close to the road, so that someone can steal your purse. Or
wow.
Your phone.
Yeah.
What do you think of that sort of policy?
Well, I think it's actually just shows what we've been trying to say for the past year almost now. This is actually worse than ever. It actually does require police action. And if you don't, it will keep going at scale. And of course, what happens is the general public is essentially blamed.
Yes.
It's saying, oh, no, you're standing too near to the curb. You should know that these guys are going to steal your phone. I mean, the problem with phone theft now is it's actually like an industrial scale in that if you have your phone stolen, so many people, including what happened to my sister-in-law, her phone got stolen when she turned to look after her toddler. Someone nicked it out of her pocket.
Yeah.
Within 2 days, 3 days, it was in China.
Yes.
That's being flown there. Like
Yes.
this is a massive industry, probably in a whole bag of other phones. Like this is big. Yes. And the reason it's big is because they're not getting caught. The police aren't focused on it. The courts aren't focused on it. And as a result, if you know you're only going to get caught less than 1% of the time, way less than 1% of the time, and if you do, you're only going to go away for a very short period, you also make a lot of money. It's worth the trade to a lot of people.
Conceptually, whenever you have to stand behind a line, the implication is always that you accept that what's beyond that line is ungovernable. So it's like being in a zoo. Don't lean over because there are lions in there. Yeah. So it's the authorities saying, okay, you keep to your bit of the pavement where you're safe, which I'm sure will get narrower and narrower as the years go by. And then the entire road area, we've given up on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
when
Mad
the theft
Max
occurred, were you
Thunderdome.
behind the line, madam? Like how short was the skirt you were wearing?
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
I mean, this is essentially what these things are built for, is to say to you, well, you were being a bit careless. I've actually heard people say, oh, I was a bit silly, really. My phone got nicked because I was using it somewhere where, I know it happens a lot. I mean, it's like, you should be allowed to use your phone in public. And of course, there's even videos which will become even more widespread now, I'm sure, of people who are right against a building with their phone out and someone just drives onto the pavement and steals it. I mean, this is, it's not much of a barrier,
So what, if I can summarize, what I sense you're doing is you're spotting daily nuisances that ruin people's lives, looking into the data behind it, and then offering government straightforward solutions, which they can hardly say no to, and trying to persuade them that it's in their best interest to do them.
Yes.
And you're extending this now to economics.
Yes.
You're wearing a T-shirt.
Yes. Looking for growth.
What is the Looking for Growth campaign?
This was born out of frustration. At the same time I was spinning up Crush Crime, I became increasingly depressed by the news on, or rather the trailed kind of suspicions about what was going to be in the budget, the upcoming budget at the time. And it sounded to me a lot like what had happened the previous year and the previous year and the previous year.
This is Reeves's first budget.
Yes.
Okay.
It looked to me, so October, November last year. And it just looked to me like, oh my God, people voted massively for change. And yet again, it is still the same thing. It is still the same process. This is like incredibly frustrating. And I just out of frustration talked to my brother, who was previously worked in the Treasury, and he left because of how frustrating that is. And a friend of mine, Joe Reeve, who left school at 16, worked in Silicon Valley. He's been trying to do several things to just like spur on innovation in the tech sector in London and really across the UK. And I was like, we should do something about this. We should just build something that makes noise on this in a very coordinated way and makes clear arguments in ways that politicians will actually have to listen to because we'll push it in front of them repeatedly. But it looks very different. It looks very different to the Crush Crime campaign in that looking for growth, it has to be something more. It has to be something which is a movement. And the reason for that is I think growth needs a very clear constituency. Economic growth is something which we all benefit from. It's something that certainly, if you ask most people, that they'll say, yes, I agree. But similar to the green movements, people are very pro the environment, but you need a coordinated group of people who are aligned, who are ready to put their time in and will try to build something, to build a clear constituency, to pressure politicians, to put forward policy. And so that's the model that I wanted to take and apply to economic growth. And so we started LFG in a bar in Camden. It was over 400 people attended our first event. It was completely packed, completely rammed. And we released there because actually, exactly on your point about easy solutions, the problem is growth is not the same as, ban this or...
it's nebulous.
Yes, much more. So I thought, what is the least nebulous thing you can do with growth? And that's produce an actual bill. And so we launched with a bill outlining, well, actually, that could be passed the very next day if government wanted to, that would enable them to build nuclear power stations, overhead electricity cables, and AI data centers within about 6 months of it being passed. Essentially, you could put spades in the ground and start digging, rather than at the moment it takes like 15 years. We stripped back a bunch of the processes. We had new environmental protections that were streamlined as well. We had payments for local people, all this kind of thing. We launched then to be able to say, well, look, we can do it. Maybe you've got a better plan. Show us your better plan. And the plan they did produce, the planning bill, some bits were similar and inspired by what we had released, and a lot more watered down and increasingly watered down, unfortunately. But this was the kind of thing that we want to produce more of as well. Doing so at the moment, looking at a few other areas, to be able to say, like, look, here is actual things you can do. Like, maybe you've got a better idea. If you don't have a better idea, here is something you could pass tomorrow. And if you did, it would do what we say, which is build these things or start building them within 6 months. You could potentially finish some of these projects, certainly the cables, data centers, within 5 years by the end of this parliament, which for this government would be a very good thing. So we were hoping that they'd be even more enthusiastic about it than they have been.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because with XL Bullies, you had this very sort of visceral, image-led campaign, which could take the public with you. That turns out the public were already there. And it is difficult growth because it's like change or delivery. It's just a word to a lot of people.
Yes.
And actually economics, for a lot,
Yes.
for a lot of people, kind of including me, it basically means nothing, 0.1% of what.
Yes.
It really reminds me of the debate we had in government when Boris Johnson came up with levelling up, which he did not have a clear definition for. And that worked really well for him because he could bang on about it and it meant different things to different people and it just sounded good.
Yeah.
And ultimately, to me, it became down to levelling up for people to actually see it and feel it. They have to see spades in the ground. They have to see the cranes up. They have to see the foundations being poured. And that's the tricky element for LFG, isn't it? That you guys can take SW1 so far,
Yes.
but they have to take it to the next stage.
Well, so there's ways so I'm actually extremely focused at the moment on exactly trying to hone our messaging onto something much more concrete, because growth is like a metaphor. It's not just a metaphor, of course. It's like a metaphor politicians have used for the last 15 years. And essentially it's being kind of used as a bit of a scam, because people keep hearing, we're going for economic growth, But
they don't feel it.
They don't feel it. And they think when politicians are saying that, actually somewhat correctly, well, they're not talking about me because my life's not getting better. So they must be talking about their rich friends. And so I think in many ways, economic growth is seen as an actual direct negative. We actually have polling on this as well, which we've done recently, just to test out, put economic growth against anything else like rising bills or otherwise. Like, people understand rising bills. They understand that there's sky high energy prices. They understand that the cost of living is rapidly increasing. So one thing that we really want to do is to bring it home. This is what this means. This is what we care about. We want, a reduced cost of living. We want lower energy prices. We want more jobs. We want people to actually be able to enjoy their lives and for things around us to function. Largely what looking for growth really is, in kind of a broader umbrella, is like anti-decline. It's both really crush crime and looking for growth. It's anti-decline. And Britain is in decline. And we are very, very, very much against both the causes of decline, which is the economic side, and the symptoms, of which is actually also the graffiti cleaning, which is showing that it is actually stuff that can be done. We spend 130 million a year on cleaning the tube. They probably could make sure it's not covered in graffiti. We can do it. It doesn't take much. You just need a couple of anti-graffiti spray and a few wipes and about an hour, and you can get it done.
I guess the issue is that choices have to be made when it comes to growth. So, for instance, the Telegraph has played host to a debate about allotments with Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
And there are some who regard these things as wonderful because they bring the countryside to the city and they give people who wouldn't have an opportunity to garden a place to garden. Others see it as an unviable use of land that's taking away from people at a period of property hunger that we could be building on. How would you respond to that? How does one make a choice in that case?
I think there's a bunch of stuff which there's loads of low-hanging fruit across this country. And I think that if you remove things, it would, for instance, you can make arguments about parks. Should we just get rid of parks and cover them in concrete, blocks of flats? I'm not supportive of just covering your parks in, you have to make life, the whole point of economic growth is to make life actually better for people. Life should be better. This does mean, though, that we will need to densify our cities. We'll need to have, people want to move to London, they want to move to Manchester, they want to move to these places, which is why the property prices are so high, because we've failed to build actual housing for people who want to move to these places. And so now, even people who've lived here all their lives are having to leave, and they're seeing their grandchildren be born outside of the city. It's hard to get to them and so on, because the property prices completely remove any ability to have your family local to you. This is killing towns across the country. It's killing cities across the country. We're all suffering for it. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to destroy all the things that people like in order to build these things. And it also means, of course, that one of the massive mistakes made was in the 60s was to build particularly public housing in this horrific, concrete monstrosities that now people associate that with building. And they don't think of the Victorian houses and the Georgian houses and otherwise, which we are actually, extremely attractive, nice places to live. They don't think of those when we talk about building. They think of that, or because of the new regulations, of course, houses with these tiny windows and with bars across the windows. It's so depressing. It's so sad. It's so miserable. And I think that's also something which we have to be very clear on. It's why I say looking for growth is really an anti-decline thing, because it's about you can build nice houses. We did it in the past. It should be cheaper today. We have better technology. We have better goods. We have more expertise. We can do it at scale. It isn't something that should be more expensive than it was historically. And it isn't something that we should think should trump everything about enjoyment in life, because the entire point of growth is to make life better for us.
I'm keen to know more about who you guys are. So when I've been looking at some of the events you've had, and everyone looks so young and cool, slightly male-leaning. It's like a sort of Silicon Valley tech bro vibe, I suppose. And coming from government and parliament, I have been part of the system that you've been coming up against largely, which is how many priorities do you have? Millions. Yeah. When do they have to be done? Yesterday. And I suppose one of my fears for your organisations is, and do correct me if I'm wrong here, is that you're a group of energised academics or young people with tech and science backgrounds. You could be living in San Francisco or Singapore and you're choosing to stay in the UK, which does speak to a sense of wanting to improve the country. But I worry that you don't have enough, former planning officers, former police officers, people with some experience of when the theory actually hits the practicalities. And I just wondered if that is in fact a fair characterization, if you're building up your team a little bit. And yes, I suppose an answer to having these brilliant conferences, having people put forward their visions, coming up with actually really practical solutions, but whether those will really implode on impact when you come up against government properly.
We actually do have a lot of people from police backgrounds. We have some people in planning. In fact, some of them want to start up an LFG chapter just on planning. There's actually, so I should say actually, we have chapters across the country as well that meet and look at issues in the local areas. We have 19 of them now, about another 20 or more in the pipeline at the moment. And one of the reasons is to get people from various different areas. But actually, no, we do have a lot of people from tech, a lot of people from outside, from certainly a wide range of industries. Certainly over the last month or two as well, a wider age demographic, but we do trend still quite young, which is quite rare in Westminster. Yes, we do actually have quite a few people who were previously in government or previously around government or have worked to various levels of frustration in the civil service and otherwise, because I want to be able to build things that are practical, that will work. But it's also the case that a lot of people inside of the system have spent so long around it that it's they're not used to disruptive behaviors, which, a lot of people from the tech industry and otherwise are like, what do you mean it's been the same way for like 100 years? That's insane. That predates the internet, that predates computers. What do you mean it's still functioning in that same way? What do you mean it's always done, so it always must do? That doesn't make sense. And it's stuff like that that's a very refreshing, very different thing. So putting those people together in the same room has often actually worked it produces interesting debates, interesting discussions, but chiefly what we're aiming at is we are not a think tank. We're about building stuff and making change happen now and pushing politicians to adopt those changes.
It reminds me of, again, being back in number 10, when Dominic Cummings sent out a sort of alert to what he called misfits and weirdos at the time. So actually quite a lot of the kind of LFG constituency, I suppose, to come into government. Yeah. And I think there were a lot of those. I mean, the system went completely bananas because that is not their usual HR process, shall we say. But also I did have this fear that you'd have all these bright people joining and sort of exploding on impact just because they would think, this is so frustrating, I can't get anything done. Yeah. Why do I have to write all these incredibly slow notes? And I was actually encouraged by how well people assimilated, actually. But yes, people weren't quite ready for that. But if we could talk a little bit about politics then, because you guys have slightly become the darlings of the Labour growth movement, and you've got reform people interested. I know you've had Conservatives turning up as well. Do you have a group you're particularly keen to work with? Are you staying apolitical? You'll work with anybody? And who have you been impressed by so far? We will work with people who want to do the good things. And we will be extremely critical when they or anyone else doesn't want to do the good things. In fact, some of the people who've come along to our events have come along after I've criticised them, and in fact have been really, really great. It's very, very important to me that looking for growth, crush crime is objective focused. Like, I think a lot of Westminster is really kind of focused on like team dynamics. Like, is my team in the ascendancy? Is it not in the ascendancy? And how do I, flag loyalties and otherwise? What I actually want to build is something that's just focused, like the Bully XL campaign was. We just want to solve the problem. I mean, quite honestly, I just want this to get better, and I'd like to go do other things. Like, I do not want to spend 10, 15 years on this. Like, this is not what I want to do. I want the country to improve. I want my son's life to be better, and I want to move on and do other stuff. Like, there is so much about politics, which does get down to, the finities of, different political philosophies, but there's a lot you can do with broad strokes. And right now, it's petty crime is something that realistically, nearly everyone across the spectrum actually agrees needs to be solved. They're just not doing it. Similarly, it doesn't matter if you're Labour, Reform, the Conservatives, you do want economic growth. You might not like all the different ways of going about it, but you can at least agree this is actually necessary to do. And so we're instead trying to inject as much as we can our beliefs, our ideas of how this could be, and to do it in a way that you can't simply dismiss by saying, well, it's because they're actually, the reason why they're critical of us now is just because, they wear the hats of the other people or, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, you have to confront, no. You know what you're doing right now, like on the planning bill, you've watered it down. You've done that. And if you're not speaking about that, you're not criticizing it, that's a problem. You have to confront it. This is the kind of thing that we want to be able to do. And I think it is extremely important on that basis to be able to be very clear that regardless of who you are, if you do the right stuff, we will support it. And if you don't do the right stuff, we really will not.
In terms of who's particularly good, I mean, there's actually quite a few MPs that really seem to care. Quite a lot of people in politics who really actually care very deeply. From the Conservative side, Katie Lamb's brilliant. She really cares. Andrew Griffith, great as well. I mean, there's many actually. Nick Timothy, Neil O'Brien's very good. On the Labour side, I'm really impressed by Chris Curtis. He cares a great deal. He's very impassioned. He cares a lot about growth. I think that's something which he himself would state as one of the chief reasons he's in politics, is to just improve the economy for people so they can have better lives. Actually, a lot from the Labour Growth Group are very interesting. They care quite deeply. Josh Simons has got particularly interesting views on the system and Westminster and how frustrating that is. Reform, Zia Youssef obviously really cares about growth and nuclear power. And, so there's people across the spectrum that I think actually get it, they understand it, and they want things to get better. The question is whether or not, one, they are able to actually enact that change, and if they are able, not just with their parties, but also for themselves to, stay true to the target and not end up like, unfortunately, everyone seems to, which is completely bogged down in staff. And then 5 years pass you by and you look back and go, well, kind of what did we do? It looks like we kind of muddled through that 5 years.
And some of that dinner party chat that you were talking
Yes.
about, do they feel like their peers are putting the right amount of pressure on them as well?
Yeah.
One of the things I did want to ask you about is, I suppose, follow through. So I think crush crime is a great example of highlighting a problem with mobile phone theft, bike theft, what can actually be done about it, a purple line apparently. But some of the it has implications on prison spaces, sentencing, so much of what we're seeing writ large through the justice system, I suppose. And actually, that takes us right back to the XL Bully campaign, where these dogs are illegal, but they are still out there. I mean, Tim had a run-in with them, with 3 last week
I went to Wales for a week.
Wales.
I saw 3, one of which went for my dog.
Wow.
So they're still out there. People still own them.
Did you report it?
No, I didn't. Should I have done so? I can't be entirely be entirely sure it is a
no,
Bully
but
XL.
actually, so this is one thing which I do think needed to be made much clearer. I found it confusing once they'd actually made it illegal. It's like it is actually it's now quite a serious crime actually to have one not leashed and muzzled in public and not neutered.
Really?
They can seize the dog. In fact, they will seize the dog, and it's then on the owner. If the police suspect it's a bully, it's on the owner to prove it isn't.
Should I then have called the police?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
They can go away.
I'm embarrassed.
The owner can go away for up to several years in prison.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a serious piece of legislation.
Okay, well, there's follow through then.
Yeah.
It's not just
We
making
thought
the
we had a
police, not
gotcha
just
question.
changing the law. It's not just telling the police what to do. You have also got to inform us, thick public,
No.
what we should be doing.
And
I didn't know any of that.
But it's also this is exactly why I found it confusing. Was I thought, well, hang on, you've done this thing, you're trading on it on your adverts, but you aren't actually telling people what to do. Like they now don't know like how this is going to function. I mean, a lot of changes at the breeding level happened. So there are distinctly less of them now. I mean, at one point they were going for £3,000 a puppy. Now it's illegal to trade them.
Right.
It's something that, yes, one, like telling the public. Also, two, bluntly, the government has to be a lot better at not just communicating, but communicating it to police forces and enabling those police forces to be able to act. That means things like training, giving them ideas of what the different dog types actually look like, and doing it in some detail and doing it quickly, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole ream of things that have to follow through.
So it doesn't just stop at changing the law, but also to pick up on what Cleo just said about the effects of cracking down on crime because of the growing pressure on the justice system.
Yeah.
That it's one thing to say, we must arrest more people. But if you do that, you then have to find capacity in the prison system to put them in the jail.
Yeah.
And what particularly the left will then say is, well, we agree with everything you're suggesting, but it comes down to tax and spend. All things ultimately are a question of tax and spend. And where's the money going to come from? So your campaigns are great, but someone in government's got to make the really controversial decision to say, and we will spend more, therefore we will raise your taxes.
When the government has a necessity in front of them, they actually do move money to do this thing. We just found out that they were, for several £billion hiding a massive mess up by the MOD. We're spending several billion a year on asylum hotels. It's very clear that when the necessity arises, government can move money to those places.
But they have to take it from somewhere first.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's prioritization. I think if you're a government and you're spending several hundred billion a year, and you look at it and you think, okay, well, if we spend another 1-2 billion on, maybe less, but on expanding prison spaces, emergency prison spaces. One thing you could do, in fact, they passed legislation like this in the 80s, is like designate emergency prison spaces. For a lot of shoplifting, a lot of phone theft, you don't necessarily need maximum security prisons. You need somewhere to hold people. You need somewhere which is, safe and available. And there are places across the country that can be identified and used. They did it before historically. Only a few decades ago, it's possible to do it now. It would require legislative change. They would have to do it quickly. But like we've seen with steel and otherwise, the government can do things. They can do things very, very quickly when they are focused on doing it, which is why the campaign exists, is to say, no, there's actually quite a lot of anger about this thing. You could do a lot of goodwill, a lot to actually make people feel more secure in their country, which is important, by yes, emergency prison spaces, by yes, doing what they've done already, which is expanding the prison building program. Well, they need to expand it much further because we're so far behind on prison spaces because the Conservative government, unfortunately, for 14 years, built, I think, net 200, 300 places, compared to, I think, New Labour did like 23,000. This government is trying to do more, but it's nowhere near enough. We're far, far too behind now.
You've focused on the XL bullies. You've focused on bike and phone theft. You're now looking for growth. What's next?
Next, what I really want to do is I'm looking from September onwards to really kind of move both crush crime and particularly LFG into kind of phase 2. And that really means ramping things up more. I think the fact that we've had some successes means that we need to keep piling that up as much as possible. We need to look at more areas for policy. We need to do more actions like the graffiti cleanups. We need to hold more events, start more chapters across the country, and really start so that politicians from across the spectrum can start to feel pressure. They feel pressure from other movements across this country, and that pressure has been extremely successful. When you look at green movements, even the woke movement for the last 10, 15 years, there wasn't a single Green Party government in this country or a single woke party in this country. And yet there has been a lot of green governments and a lot of actually woke governments because the actual focus has been of these movements to build significant pressure on politicians to move them in their directions. And that's exactly what we plan on doing.
Dr. Lawrence Newport, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.